Hi Lisa, I'm glad I found you on the internet and that I had the opportunity to meet you at the live Ansgabaka No Mind Festival. The question I had was, how do you stay motivated to live your life in this me body? I think that the answer depends on where you are at in your development. I recently read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and my understanding after reading that is that it is impossible to attain enlightenment if you look for it. It's funny, your enlightenment moment at Bali, I also attained enlightenment there. At least that was what I thought at that moment. Me and my girlfriend shared an omelette with magic mushrooms from some obscure restaurant. What was interesting during the hallucination was that I thought that I had managed to stop time, something I got from reading Carlos Castanas' Don Juan book. The enlightenment was gone in the morning after. I had a thought today that scared me. If all humans play different characters, but the I behind it all the same I, then I'm really alone. Okay. So yeah, I remember speaking to you, and I remember you coming up and asking me that question, like how to find motivation. To me, when you ask that question, you're speaking from like mixed up levels. I don't know if there's been the energetic shift there yet, Jonan. I don't know what your level is, whether it's just an intellectual understanding or there's been an energetic shift or if there's been awakening. But I'll just go through it all. So when there is this awakening, it's this deep seeing that who you are is not a thing, no thing, appearing as everything, and that it's conscious of itself, that it knows itself. You can't say necessarily that consciousness is the source, but consciousness is the method in which this mysterious force is knowing itself. This thing, this no thing, is experiencing itself as everything. So consciousness is the nearest to the source, like consciousness is the way, is what it's producing or creating to know itself. So consciousness is the connection to that source, and it's what is happening in every human life form, is that there is consciousness. You never switch consciousness off. It's not like you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm awake, let me switch consciousness on. Because you can't switch it on, because how would you even know you're doing that if you're not conscious? So when I say consciousness, I'm not talking about something like Freud or Jung would talk about the subconscious and the conscious mind. I would call that personal awareness, and then the unconscious or the subconscious. But I'm talking about big consciousness. I'm talking about if you get a whack over your head and pass out, then it's lights out and consciousness is aware of nothing, or consciousness knows nothing. So when you're asleep, it seems like there's no consciousness, but it's actually that consciousness is at rest. And then lights come back on again, and first thing that happens when you wake up in the morning is consciousness comes in. And then you don't sit there and think, oh, let me switch my consciousness on. It's the birthright. It's the birthright of all beings to know, to experience. It's really magical, it's wonderful, that magic of knowing, not knowing something in time. What happens in the human form, though, is we identify with the intellect and we identify with the thinking mind, and we divide ourselves. We begin to imagine ourselves as a body, as a form, as an age, as a colour, as a nationality, and we begin to think that is who we are, and we hold it inside our head as if that's who we are. But how could that be who you are? That's something that's not there all the time, but yet consciousness is there all the time. It's the first thing that has to come in. Is consciousness comes in when you wake up in the morning, and then the memory of the you comes in. But there's always this identification with an image of self, and this creates a lot of emotional distress in the person because you're living a lie. That's not who you are. So there can be this awakening, and that there's like an energetic shift back to that. Back to this emptiness, and it's energetic, it's like an expansion, because consciousness is actually everywhere, it's not in here. We imagine that consciousness is behind our head or inside our head or behind the eyes and belongs to us, but actually consciousness is everywhere. It's not located in here. It's the same with that sense of being, that sense of aliveness. It's not located in the body, it is everywhere. It's everything. And that consciousness can look from multiple angles, because it's it's universal, and it's not located somewhere. It's not it doesn't have a brain, and it's not linear, it's not in time, so it can look from multiple angles, and it doesn't have a brain, so it can't think, oh, I'm looking through Lisa now, and then I'm going to look through Jerry, because that's a human thing to think about these things. Consciousness is looking innocently, and it's all intelligence, it is everything, so it can look from multiple angles and receive that information and know that information. But the human can't remember that, and the human can't know that. So to the human, that's abstract. Things only happen in logic, in cause and effect, and in time, and in this linear timeline. So the imagination that, or the idea that the reality is multi-dimensional, and but it's all one energy experiencing through multiples, through many. If you think of it like a bag, so if we had like a paper bag here and we poked lots of holes in it, and then I put a light inside, it's one light, but it's looking through many. And that's the same as the essence, but the essence actually isn't consciousness. The essence is mystery. Consciousness is the first thing that comes into play in order to experience itself. So it needs consciousness in order to be there to be life. And in order for there to be consciousness, there needs to be something to be conscious of, otherwise nothing's happening. So it's like one comes with the other. But there can be this energetic shift where that is seen, and your essence isn't located in the body anymore. Your essence is everywhere. And then there is this body that's moving around in who you are. So this vessel is moving in who you are. And your essence doesn't have any motivation. So often when people wake up, they don't have motivation to do things, because they're so identified with, or that they've had such an explosive awakening, there's such an expansion that they can't feel the body, or they don't feel the impulses in the body properly. And sometimes it can take a period of time for the impulses in the body to come back, because you need to, in order for something to happen, you need to have an impulse. Like we can say it's nobody acting, but the way that nobody acts through this body is through the movement towards pleasure. So it has an impulse to do something, it has a desire to do something. So a desire to eat, or a desire to drink tea, or a desire to go for a walk, or a desire to do whatever it needs to do. But sometimes when you're waking up as well, it can get muddled in with depression. So sometimes in waking up, it's got nothing to do with everything that I just explained. And it depends how that feeling of not doing anything, because if you've had that awakening, then it doesn't, and you've had that shift to who you truly are, then you don't care that you're not doing anything. So it doesn't matter. Like the only reason you care is because people are nagging at you or something to do something, or you're running out of money, but it doesn't matter. You don't really care because you're home, you're free. But so you have to identify what that feeling feels like not knowing what to do. Because if it's a depressive feeling, then it's actually got nothing to do with the awakening process. So I just wait for that helicopter to pass. So it's got nothing to do with the awakening process. It's a depressive feeling that that is in the solar plexus, and to do with the chakra there, and that chakra being too much out of balance. And it's something that you'll have felt throughout your life, and it's a depressive feeling. So as you become more in contact with your body, and as you listen to this subject and you become more real and more honest with yourself, you might notice that the personality structure doesn't have any motivation to do anything. And the reason that the personality structure, this is different from consciousness, this is different from awakening. The reason on the psychological level why the personality structure often doesn't feel motivated to do things, or doesn't have any desires, is because of low self-esteem and a feeling like it can't do things, it's trapped, or it's a failure. So this is something that might be coming up in your body as you become more sensitive. And it's just seeing that this is illusion and that this isn't true. But it's a phase that a lot of people go through, that they realize that a lot of their motivation, a lot of their work ethic was based on like mentally telling themselves to do it, but deep down they had a depressive, low energy, not wanting to do things. And that's often because you were brought up with people that were often telling you you're a failure and that you can't do things. You see, the body naturally wants to do things. So when you have that big awakening, like the consciousness has no urge to do anything, and it takes a while for the body for that to integrate in the body, but the body naturally wants to do things. Like if you look to a dog or if you look to animals, they have an instinct to move as much as they need to move, and it's the same with your body. Your body has the desire to eat, your body has the desire to go to the toilet, your body has the desire to hunt for food and to get food and to win or to achieve or to compete. But often that's really out of balance in a lot of people. People, it's not out of balance and they're normally really successful because like attracts like. So people that feel like they can do it and that they are going to do it, and they're off doing it and they're off achieving money and achieving success because they feel like they can. So then it's looking at the solar plexus and what the solar plexus is. The solar plexus is part of the chakra system, and the way that we feel our body is through the chakra system. So when you have particular thoughts, you feel it in particular areas of your body. And we know this from language. So when you feel afraid, we say we shit ourselves. So fear is in the gut. Sexuality is in the the root chakra, and maybe in the sacral chakra. And then love, like a broken heart, so that comes from the heart. Or we got a frog in our throat from too much emotion, or that we're psychic, or the third eye, that we can see time, that we can see things, or the connection to something bigger that comes from the top chakra. So all our chakras have feelings and have sensations in them and have thoughts in them. So when you're thinking particular things, your body is feeling particular things, but often we're completely unconscious of this. So we might be having thoughts and feelings that we're a failure and we can't do something. And then what we might be thinking on the surface level is how much we dislike society, or how it's society's fault that makes us work like this, or that your boss is an asshole, or that life is unfair. And really what's happening is that deep down that you feel like a failure, you feel the basic feelings of that chakra, you feel like you're stuck, you're trapped, you're depressed, that you can't get out of something, you're helpless. So let me tell you the feelings of the solar plexus. So the solar plexus in the positive is a feeling that it can do something, that it has choices, that it can complete, that it will do something, that it's successful, that it can achieve, feels active and energized. And in its negative, it feels hopeless, helpless, incapable of doing things. It feels stuck, it feels depressed, it feels frustrated and angry. But this is something that you have to put attention into to get to know your chakra system and get to know your body. Most of the time, why a lot of humans are in such an illusion about life is because they're just looking at their mentality and what they think. And you're thinking lies, whereas your body doesn't. So your body is telling you what you feel. It's telling you the truth about your thoughts. And you can recondition that and you can change it. But so when you go to a situation, you're moaning about your boss, if you're aware of your chakra system, you can realize that actually it's not your boss, it's that you feel a failure. You feel like you failed at something and that you can't do something. And that gives you lack of energy, and it gives you lack of motivation, lack of direction. If you feel that positivity, like you can do something and that you can be successful, there's actually motivation to do something. People get this so muddled up with non-duality because they hear that consciousness has no preference and that your true nature has no preference, which is true. And then they try to personify that onto the human. Whereas the human always has natural feelings and motivation and ambition, but your essence doesn't. So what to do about this? For some people, particularly men, this can be really hard to see, and it can sound like I'm talking goggly goop because you're totally cut off from what your body is feeling. But you can just put your attention there. If you can't feel anything, you can give it a massage. Like stick your finger in there, your thumb. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but just stick your thumb into your solar plexus and massage it. So solar plexus is the top of the tummy, where the triangle of the ribs meet. So right there, so the ribs go like that, and it's right there. And just give it a massage. And then try saying these particular thoughts with it. Like while you're massaging it, I'm a failure, I can't do it, life never works out for me, it's hopeless, it's other people's fault, nobody helps me, I'm stuck, I can't choose, nothing will ever work out for me, I'm a failure, it's hopeless, I'm stuck, life is hopeless, it's pointless, there's no meaning to life. And then you'll begin to realize that those thoughts that I'm saying, that's the negative thoughts of that chakra, resonate with you. And on the surface level, you're telling yourself all this drama and all this story, believing it's true. And you realize that your solar plexus is just in a certain vibration. So then you can begin to change that vibration by bringing in the positive. I can do something. I am successful. I am loved. People appreciate my work. I do well. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to get everything I want. And if it's not too entrenched in suffering, then you can feel that positivity of that thought. So, the way to determine whether this is a spiritual thing or whether this is a chakra thing, not a spiritual thing, a non-dual thing, like the absolute thing, or a chakra thing, the way you determine that is that with the non-dual awakening, it feels amazing, and the fact that you can't do anything isn't a problem. You're in love. You love. If it feels really uncomfortable that you can't do things, that you've got no motivation to do things, then you know it's a chakra thing that you need to look at. Simple. Okay, you have more questions here. I had a thought today that scared me. If all humans play different characters, but the I behind them is all the same, then I am really alone. Yes. But it's not you on the human level. So notice in that it's the human that got afraid. But on the absolute level, consciousness isn't afraid. Consciousness has always been one energy experiencing itself. So that's the human that's afraid of being alone. And really, the human never existed. So the idea of on the human level that it can be alone or can't be alone is a funny idea, because really the human is a collection of thoughts and ideas and feelings that are appearing now. Hi again. Sorry to bother you again, but I just found Ramana Maharshi and got curious about your teachings in relation to his. He seems to use true and false but though I feels interchangeable with me, and that that you talk about. You probably talk about this in one of your recordings. I remember you saying you have, oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Okay. Ramana Maharshi says in one of his talks that one should continuously ask oneself during the day, who am I? Is this your opinion as well? My opinion is with practice is do whatever you're drawn to on the human level. Even though there is no chooser, there is direction that's appearing in that body, and do that which makes you feel expansive on the human level. So if the who am I resonates for you, then go for it. If these talks resonate for you, then go for it. If sitting in meditation resonates for you, then go for it. And trust that inner feeling of expansiveness. Like always look for that which makes you feel expanded. Thank you for your talks about my question. No, I'm not near awakening, but after giving up drinking, my mind started searching more intensely for a meaning in everything. Yeah. Well, I've given lots of answers there, so hopefully that helped.